Hey, this is Matthew with BI Polar. In this video about being a PM at Microsoft, I'm going to talk about the importance of asking dumb questions. I hope you'll stay with me. Welcome back. If you're new to the series, please make sure to check out the introductory video where I talk about my goals and audience for this series. Essentially, what I want to do is I want to share advice that if I had known when I was starting my career as a PM at Microsoft 15 years ago, it would have helped me. Since I can't go back in time to give my past self advice, I want to share some of this advice with you so that you can learn from my mistakes and some of the lessons that I've learned along the way. And today, I want to talk about the importance of asking dumb questions. Now, very often it's difficult to ask a question in front of a group of people when you don't know the answer because it always feels like everybody else knows what's going on, even if you don't. And what I've found is I've moved from being a senior PM up through the principal PM band is that the more I ask these questions, the better off I do and the more success I see. One of the most canonical examples is in a larger group meeting, very often the organizer or the person who's doing most of the speaking tends to assume that everybody in the room is on the same page and simply works from their own starting point as the baseline and just runs forward from there. What I found is that in a lot of situations, like, I don't know why I'm there. Like, what's the goal of the meeting? What's the agenda? What defines success for this half hour or hour that we're all investing our time in? And when I started my current role almost 6 years ago, so when I joined my current team almost 6 years ago, I found that there was like a lot more of this than I'd noticed before. And I knew that if I didn't ask, I'd never know. And I basically started raising my hand and asking these basic questions like, what are the goals of the meeting? What are we working towards? Like, why are we talking about this thing? How does it relate to other things? Why am I here? Why are we here? And it felt awkward at first, but what I found was leaving the meeting, and this is before the pandemic started, so leaving the meeting meant walking out of a physical conference room and walking down a hallway very often towards the next conference room and the next meeting. People would come up to me after the meetings, catch up to me in the hallway as we were leaving the conference room. They would say, "Matthew, thank you for asking that question. I was wondering the same things, but I wasn't comfortable. I didn't dare ask myself." And it's almost become a cliche for the team that I work with most closely for me to raise my hand in a meeting and to say, what's the problem we're trying to solve here? Because everybody wants to talk about solutions, but it seems like everybody always assumes that everybody knows what problem we're working to solve. And the bigger your group gets, the more important it is to make sure that everybody knows what's the problem we're talking about, so that as they're critically evaluating a proposed solution, they're evaluating it against not whether it's a good solution, but whether it's a good solution for the problem that it needs to solve. And in this context, I want to share 3 pieces of advice, like 3 tips that I wish that I could share with my past self. And the first one, which is kind of obvious when you hear it out loud, is that you can't do your best work unless you have the information and the context about that work. If you don't know the problem that you're trying to solve, how other parties or people or teams are related, like without the things that are often omitted early on, if you don't have that information, you can't really align on the right direction and choose the right priorities. And asking early is the best way to learn. The second piece of advice that I want to share is that asking this type of question is part of a growth mindset. And if you're at Microsoft today, the terms fixed mindset and growth mindset are part of the corporate culture, the corporate vocabulary. And the fixed mindset is often known as the know-it-all. If you have a fixed mindset in a conversation, you are motivated to be right, to win the conversation or win the meeting, to be the smartest person in the room, whereas having a growth mindset is more about being a learn-it-all, or about working to increase your understanding of the work at hand so that through your own personal growth, you can drive more impact and more predictable success. So one of the things that is often hard to do, like it's hard to raise your hand, it's hard to be the nail that sticks up because no one wants to be hammered back down. But for teams with a healthy, inclusive culture, asking this type of question will be recognized or should be recognized as being part of that growth mindset to which each one of us should be aspiring. And the third piece of advice that I want to share, sort of riffing back to that earlier story, is that if you have a question, odds are somebody else is asking the same thing and isn't going to be brave enough to ask. And I want to say, when I started doing this, I didn't feel brave. I felt like an idiot. But other people perceived me as being brave. They perceived my willingness to ask as a demonstration of confidence, as a demonstration of maturity. And even though it didn't feel that way at the time, I've become able to think about asking this type of question with that mental context. This is one of the things that I see as being an aspect of my growth in my role as a PM and my maturity in the organization where I work. I do want to add something of a privilege warning or privilege disclaimer, though. I'm a middle-aged white guy. I've been at Microsoft for 15 years. I've been in industry for almost 30 years. People assume that I know what I'm talking about. If you're new to career or from an underrepresented background, understand that you're playing a different game or playing a game with slightly different rules, maybe not so slightly different than the game that I'm playing. You're playing the game on a harder level of difficulty. And because of that, it may not be as safe for you to ask this type of questions as freely and openly as I might. And this is a place where I would encourage you build that level of trust with your manager or with a more senior peer colleague so that you have a place where you can ask this type of question. Because even if it's not safe for you to ask in a group, or even if you don't feel that it is, it's still vital that you get the answers. If you have a question, it's not dumb to ask. It's dumb to sit on it and not know. Because here's the deal. It only gets harder the longer that you wait to ask. As you move forward, like if you didn't ask in the first meeting, in the second meeting, everybody is assuming that everybody was in the first meeting, so they know what was discussed then. And if you ask a question that was foundational to things that were already discussed and already settled, it's still valid to ask, but in the second meeting, it's harder than it was in the first. In the third or fourth or fifth, it only gets more difficult. So make sure that you understand asking this type of question, it's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of growth, and it's a sign of confidence that you are willing to put yourself out there to get the information that you need to do the best possible job. And who could ask for more than that? That's what I've got for this video. I'd love to hear what you think. Please do comment, like, subscribe. As I've mentioned in other videos in the series, I'm really looking for your feedback to understand, is this information useful? Do you have similar experiences? Have yours been different? Is there any advice that you would add to this topic? What would you like to see in future videos? Would really love to hear what you think, and I'd love to see you next time.